Xuni is a collection of cross-platform UI controls for XamarinForms. With XamarinForms, you can write once in C# and XAML to develop native apps for all devices. Xamarin provides a standard toolbox of controls, but with Xuni, you get more controls that either fill the gap or add more time-saving features. We've developed Xuni to provide native experiences in Android, iOS, and Windows Phone, with the same API across all platforms. In this video, I will walk you through getting started with Xuni using Visual Studio. You can also use Xuni with Xamarin Studio. First, let's create a XamarinForms application, or you can open up an existing project. You need to install XamarinForms from the Xamarin website in order to get the mobile app project templates. Here, I've named my blank app as Xuni app. When you create a XamarinForms project, you actually get 4 projects: a Xamarin.iOS project, Xamarin.Android project. These 2 projects allow you to write C# and build native apps. You also get a shared project or portable class library. The code you write here enables you to write once and build cross-platform mobile apps on all platforms. If you're using Visual Studio, you also get a Windows Phone project, unlocking this third platform. Now, even though I have an iOS project here, I can't actually compile and debug this app on my Windows machine. The nature of iOS is that it can only work on a Mac, so that's why you saw that option to remote connect to a Mac build host. I won't cover that process in this video, but I'm sure Xamarin has plenty of resources available on that subject. Since I'm working on Windows, I will only be able to build and run the Windows Phone and Android versions of my application. The Windows Phone emulator is installed with the Windows Phone SDK. And note that it might be an optional download with Visual Studio depending on the version you need. For Android, you can use any of the emulators that come with the Android SDK. When you installed XamarinForms, the Android SDK was installed for you. But you can also, and I strongly recommend, download the Xamarin Android Player emulator. It's beautiful and much faster than the ones in the Android SDK. You'll see the default template just displays Hello Forms in all versions of the app. Now let's take a look at how this is accomplished. If we open up the shared or portable project and look at the app.cs file, here we can see that a content page is being created in code. The content of this page is simply being set to a label. Now we can create a few different types of pages in our Forms apps, and we can define them in code or XAML. Let's create a new XamarinForms XAML page, which, as the name implies, it will be defined by XAML, our application markup. Then we'll add a Xuni control to this page and configure the app to show this new page instead of the Hello Forms placeholder. Right-click on the portable project and click Add New Item. Then select a Forms XAML page and name it as My Page. This will create 2 files, mypage.xaml.cs and mypage.cs. If you're familiar with XAML development, then you'll understand this. If you're new to it, the XAML page will contain the initial definition of our UI in markup, known as XAML. So here we can create our buttons and our list views, and then in the CS file, this will contain our code behind, or our coded logic that includes event handlers and the initialization code. For example, I can create a button in my XAML markup. I'll give it a name, like button 1, and then after I build my project, I can then access button 1 in my code behind. So here I can set initial properties on the button in code or in XAML. Since Xuni is a collection of UI controls, this is where we can begin to use it. But first, we need to add a reference to the Xuni libraries so our project knows how to create them. Xuni is fully managed through NuGet. When you install Xuni, we add the Grape City NuGet source feed to your NuGet package settings in Visual Studio and Xamarin Studio. So all you need to do is open the Tools menu or the Project menu in Xamarin Studio and select Manage or Add New Packages for the solution. From the Package Manager, select the Grape City source feed on the left, and then you can select which Xuni packages you need. The nice thing about NuGet is that you don't have to worry about dependencies. For instance, each Xuni library depends on the Xuni core library. But if you're interested in using FlexPie, all you have to do is select that library and click Install. Then select which projects within the solution you want it added to. For this, you must select all projects since we are creating a cross-platform solution. We don't want FlexPie in just one version of the app. Then all of the necessary dependencies are automatically downloaded as well, and we're ready to go. Also, we have to select that we accept the license agreement. And just like the Xamarin controls, we can create Xuni controls in code or in XAML. Let's focus on creating it in XAML, and then we'll access it in code to modify it, since that is the most standard approach. First, we need to add the namespace to our XAML page, just like you would add a namespace at the top of your C# file. So here we'll type xmlns:/Xuni equals CLR namespace Xuni.Xamarin.FlexPie, and the assembly is Xuni.Xamarin.FlexPie. Now we can define controls found at that namespace in our markup using the ID Xuni that I just defined. So here I'll type out Xuni:/FlexPie, and then I'll close the tags. So now I've just declared the control, but I'm going to give it a name, and then we'll populate it with some data and code behind. I'll build the project so they can access the control and code behind. Now if I had a view model configured, I could bind the item source property of FlexPie to my collection of data objects, following the standard MVVM pattern. But since this is a new blank project, I will quickly create a simple business object with two properties, label and value. And then I'll populate a list of these objects. I'll set the item source property of the control to my list, and then I will set the binding property to the value field and the binding name property to label. This is what we'll display in the legend. Before we run the project, we need to configure the app to show My Page. If you remember, the app is showing the dynamic Hello Forms page. Now we can build the app, and we should see My Page shown upon load. Select which version of the app you wish to run and debug, and right-click the project and set it as the startup project. I'll run the Android version for now. In your toolbar, you should see some basic configuration settings like release and debug, as well as select which emulator or physical device you wish to run on. The Nexus emulator here I have installed from the Xamarin Android player, so I'll select that and run the app. The first thing you'll notice is that My Page did load, but we get an error that no license key was found for Xuni. Xuni does in fact have runtime licensing, so even if you are evaluating, you need to generate a runtime key for the app. It's very easy to do. You just log in on the Xuni website and select licensing, and here you will select evaluation as your serial number, and then enter the name of your app. The name of your app is essentially the assembly name in Visual Studio. In Xamarin Studio, it's labeled as the app name more precisely, but this is what you should enter. So for me, I will enter Xuni app. Then I'll click Generate. There's no limit to the number of runtime keys you can generate during your 30-day trial, so you can rename your app 8 times, you just need to regenerate a new unique key each time. For more information on licensing, you should check out the documentation. But quite simply, we take the generated key and paste it into our shared project. The output key actually includes a class name as well, which is not necessary, but it makes your code look a bit cleaner. So here I'll add a new class to my project called license.cs, and then I'll replace the code with the generated license code. And then finally, the key step here is to set this license to the Xuni license manager. We do this in the onLoad event within the app.cs file. Just set Xuni.Xamarin.Core.LicenseManager.Key to our license key. Now we can run our app and fully evaluate the controls. Only one license is needed per app, and you can use any number of Xuni controls on any number of pages. By just populating the FlexPie control, we get a lot of features right out of the box, like loading animation and touch tooltips. But we can very easily begin to configure the control by setting more properties. For example, let's change the color palette by setting the palette property. FlexPie and FlexChart include a dozen predefined palettes, or you could define your own color array here. Another thing we can do is change the position of the legend, so here I'll set the position to the bottom. Before we wrap up this video, it's important to note that before you can run the iOS or Windows Phone apps, you have to add a single initialization line of code to each of these platform projects. In your iOS project, open up the appdelegate.cs file, and within the finished launching method, add Xuni.Xamarin.FlexPie.renderer.ios.forms.init. Likewise, in Windows Phone, you need to open the mainpage.xaml.cs file and add Xuni.Xamarin.FlexPie.platform.winphone.flexPieRenderer.init within the initialization. And now I'll run the app on Windows Phone as well, so you can see the power of writing once with XamarinForms. And with FlexPie, we're able to add a great new visualization to our app, saving ourselves time of having to write or customize this control ourselves. And that's all for this Getting Started video. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to this channel for more in-depth videos on Xuni and cross-platform mobile development.